for coming, and I really appreciate your taking your time to come out and watch this quick staff development about patterns of power. We've talked about patterns of power in our last meeting, and you received the book and kind of went over the kind of overview, but we're going to talk a little bit about it more in depth, and we're going to explain the importance of, this is what we're going to be talking about today. This is kind of what we're going to do. We're going to be reading, talk about the Knowing Book, we're going to do a turn and talk, and we're going to talk about how we transform our thinking we're going to change how we see conventions of writing, from our old way of looking at it into our new way of looking at it. We're going to talk about author's purpose and author's craft. We're going to revisit the focus phrase, and we're going to talk about planning. And I kind of broke planning up a little bit differently into intention and into invitation. And then when I noticed we were at our last meeting, I heard discussions about difficulty of children using conventions in their writing. So I added a separate section that was not addressed at all, was about how to apply our what we're doing. And at the end of this, you're going to have the opportunity to to talk about how we can apply and how we can celebrate patterns of conventions in their writing. And we're going to possibly use some books to come up with working on how to do an invitation to edit. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about this book. This is a wonderful knowing book, and I'm just not going to, I love the whole thing, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it kind of is an inspirational about, I want you to think about as I read it, how this relates to grammar and how this relates to conventions of writing. It's really, it's short. And it says, so, before you forget, look up. The sky has always been above you. It is above you now, and will always be above you. Count on it. It is what you will always know. Open a door, follow a trail, or a sidewalk or a sign. Any one of them will take you somewhere. You will choose. Step one step at a time, and don't ignore a hum, and don't deny a cry. Both are useful, and both are good, and both will comfort you if you are lost. Know this, there is magic around you, but it hides. You might find it nestled in a wand or a spell, but more likely in a penny or a prayer. Be open to it. Sit down on a step or a hill or at the edge of a sea. Take time to imagine something, or let something imagine you. The unknown is waiting. Carry a map as a guide, but explore those trails not drawn on paper. This is called curiosity, and this is called adventure. Keep them in your pocket. So what I'd like you to do is very quickly turn and talk to y'all's table partners, your elbow partners, about how that is related to conventions of writing and grammar instruction. Books yourselves.
Well, it had Joyce Blow, very nice. I like the way she read it with the expression. So if it didn't have punctuation.
What do you think that when you're talking about conventions and
So that's-
writing, how does that relate to adventure?
Adventure.
Really?
Because maybe with children, every writing piece of theirs should be an adventure to them.
Okay. Any other ideas you want to share?
So I went on a tangent.
That's all right. Tangents are always good.
I said that this book was great for teaching grammar because of the expressions that you were using. If it didn't have grammar or if it didn't have the punctuation in there, then we wouldn't have heard it the way you actually said. It was beautiful. But
Thank you. Well, what I wanted to want you to think about, or what I was kind of looking about, was this is about paying attention to things around you. And part of Patterns of Power is about note-making, noticing things. and noticing how writers write. And it is about taking risks. I want children to be able to try to use what they're doing and taking a risk when they're writing. And having curiosity as to why do we use that? Why is that in that writing? Why is that author using it? So it is a adventure. It is more of a process, a journey that we take our children on. And as teachers, we have the power to be the ones that give them that love of that writing and that love of that adventure and that curiosity. So it's less about right or wrong, and you'll hear more about that later. It's more about the adventure of writing. Okay, so how do you teach grammar? Is it drill and practice, or is it something that they learn, that they have an adventure, that they're working on their curiosity? So children come to school with a wealth of things they already know. If you think about all their language that they have, they can talk in complex sentences, they use conjunctions, they use contractions, they come with a lot of knowledge. And what are conventions? Some people are like, I don't know what you're talking about when you talk about conventions of writing. A convention is simply an agreement that is between a reader and a writer. So as you are reading things, you have an agreement with that writer as to what those things in that mean and how they're using them. And conventions are used to help the writers make meaning. The use of conventions changes over time, and they'll change sometimes based on how the writer is trying to convey a meaning. So conventions are not just used to know right or wrong or how to do it, but it's to make sure that children have the ability as writers to convey meaning. So grammar is reading and writing crashing together and making meaning, okay? So you crash what you read and crash what you write, and it makes meaning. And one of the most important things is that every sentence you read holds a truth about writing. Every sentence you read to them, or every sentence you show them, holds some truth about writing. Sometimes only if but you have to pay attention to it. They have to be able to notice it. Okay, so next slide. So I want to transform our thinking from the old patterns, which I taught for 23 years, and I know I had these patterns of thinking. We were told to teach that way. That was the way we were instructed. I wasn't just making it up. So flooding lessons with unnecessary terminology. That's the old thing. It's like complex sentences. It's less about that and more about showing what that convention is doing for the reader and showing what that convention is doing for the writer. How does it operate? What is the purpose? What is it doing? Taking a right or wrong stance. That's related to DOLs, or dumb luck. It's saying, if you don't know, how do you shape meaning if you don't know the original intent? So if you don't know what the purpose of that piece of literature was, how do you know why or why not that was there? And correcting. Be aware of correcting a lot of things, because you can't fix everything all at once, because in writing there's so many things. Noun and verb agreement, period, incidence, capitalization, proper, There's so much in one sentence you could fix. So as teachers, just be aware of not correcting everything. And instead, show how when they're reading it, when they're showing you something or they're reading something they've written, ask them questions like, I see what you're trying to say, or what do you can do to help your meaning become clear? So it's about using craft to make meaning, using conventions in a meaningful way. Okay, so we talk a lot about author's purpose and author's craft, and they're not quite the same. And some people think they do. Author's purpose is why writers do what they do. So why are they doing it? Okay, why does he want that there? Why is he using quotation marks? And how are they showing talking? Okay, he wants to show talking, and he's going to do that by using quotation marks. So it's why they're doing it and how they're doing it. So there's two different things, and we want to work on. We do a lot of why, but we need to work on how. Okay, and that's where it gets into application. We talked a little bit about a focus phrase, and those were these very simple sentences. I capitalized names. We talked about that, and I just wanted to tell you that the 3 points that I thought were important was keeping the teacher focused on planning and delivery. So your focus phrase is not only for the students, but it's for you to make sure you keep yourself focused. And it keeps focus, the focus phrase is simple, so it keeps the children focused. But one I thought was very interesting that was a key component to focus phrases was the last one. It's a source for student self-talk. So when a student is trying to use metacognitive skills to write, they need to have the language that they can use to help I capitalize names. It's simple, it's easy, and it's about themselves and how they do it. It gives them the self-talk for doing it. Okay? So we talked about these other things, being concise, written in student language, not KUDs or TEKs, and based on clearly defined goals. So it's very simple. You don't want to have, a lot of our TEKs have several conventions crammed into one TEK. You might need to break it up into simple, not the whole thing. Okay. So this is the first part. The planning process is about intention. And in the Patterns of Power book, what they talked about on page 8 and page 26, they talked about all those, how you can do it all in 10 minutes. Okay? This part is not done in those 10 minutes. Okay? This part is the part that's kind of like, we used to probably call pre-planning. So the actual lessons take 10 minutes, but the thinking behind what you're doing takes a little bit long, is additional time. Breaking the standard and covering what it has to do. We, as a team, I know we do this constantly. We're working on something. But we want to connect the convention to why does an author use that, and how do they do it? So we do a great job of figuring out the TEK or the standard or skill, but we need to move on how does the authors use it and how do they do it, and then develop a focus phrase. And one thing we're going to be talking about is developing mentor sentences through rich literature. So I wanted to show you in this Patterns of Power, he has lessons with specific books that you can do. The problem is that book may not fit what you're doing or the genre you're doing or whatever. So how do we translate his stuff into our books? And that's just about finding mentor sentences. And that's another usage of mentor text. So then we talked about invitation, a planning process of invitations. Invitation to notice. The first one is, what do you notice? What is the function of whatever you're looking on? So you want to talk about the function. Why are you talking about nouns? How do they function? What does the nouns do when we read it with our eyes? Well, they don't do anything, but they tell us a name of something. Invitation to compare and contrast. This is about rich conversation in comparison and contrasting. The key to that component is making sure that children are talking, not we're talking. And these are one of the keys to all these invitations. An invitation to imitate together. You'll notice on this slide, I didn't underline it because it's a little bit different. You have different options: shared writing, interactive writing, paired writing, independent writing. You can't do all of them. You can do one a day, moving from most structured to less structured, or teacher-directed, more teacher-directed to no teacher direction. Support. So you can move that way, or you can pick, I'm going to do shared writing, or I'm going to do paired writing, and then next week you're going to do shared writing, interactive writing, or maybe you're going to do interactive writing, independent writing. Okay? But the critical part of imitating is we are rereading our writing. It is critical for editing later that the children have those rereading skills, the ability to help them with editing later. And today we're going to talk about there's 4 we're going to focus on, because we focused a lot on that last time, was invitation to celebrate. And invitation to celebrate is I thought this was wonderful. This is all from Patterns of Power, Jeff Anderson. I'm giving him credit. This whole slide and everything, information I gathered, all came from this book. So I don't want you to think that I'm gone crazy and writing stuff. It all comes from that book, so I give him credit. Is applying what we learned covered in joy. So it is no different than many of the things that we do, but it is the power of our spontaneous joy and showing them joy in their writing. Okay, and then the last one was invitation to edit. That's when you take your mentor sentence, you have it, and then you write 3 sentences that are basically incorrect, or you're going to basically do you compare and then edit those sentences. It's kind of related to compare and contrast, but this is also related to STAR skills. We don't want to teach the STAR, but we do editing is a skill, and this does hit a star. And here is invitations to apply. So this is how do we take these 10-minute lessons and make sure that the children have opportunities to transfer it to what we're doing. And that's where you think about using it as a tool for responding to readers. So you might have a notebook, not 1,000 notebooks, but a reader response notebook where you encourage them to use these conventions when they respond, maybe in one of your Reading Daily 5 centers. Having them use these when you want to teach summarization, like what's coming up, so that's hit me. We're doing summarization, so we want them to say, use this skill of nouns while we're summarizing. So you could have a convention journal, and you could have the students, when they see that convention, start adding that snippet, that sentence in that convention journal. Then you can have them go back, after you taught a convention, go back to their writer's notebook, something that's already written already, and they can see if they can add that convention to their own writing. It hits the convention, it also hits editing. Conferring with students when they are writing. So when they're writing, you go around and you say, oh, I see, oh, you talk about the convention. Just encouraging them to use it. And if you have an editing list in your room of all the things like you've already done capitalizing, or you've already done sentences in with punctuation, or you've already done verbs, I know that verbs, action words are verbs. You add whatever convention you're on to an editing list, so that when you've taught a convention and you're expecting them to start using that convention, you can have it in an editing list and they can go back. And so your editing lists are for your class and for the needs of your students. Okay, so those are the references. I just want to share the reference page. So what we're going to do, because I know I have to go fast, and we're going to talk about, I'll go back, and I'll show you the slide for invitation to celebrate and invitation to edit. And so what I did is I have some books here, and y'all, I thought that y'all probably want to work with partners because it's just easier to talk to someone and you learn sometimes more when you play off each other. So these are literally just, I thought, common books. Books people are familiar with, books you might read, books you know, not any book you haven't maybe heard of before. So I tried to, these are my own personal books, so I just tried to pick some ones that in a normal classroom, you don't have to find this particular book. So you could just use, so we learn how to use any book as a mentor text to find a convention and teach it. So what we're going to do is we're kind of going to, we know the TEKS, so we only have a short amount of time, so we're going to kind of skip some of these, the first steps, the invitation to notice, the invitation to compare and contrast, the invitation to imitate together. We're going to skip those because we're going to focus, because I want to focus on the ones that we have most difficulty with, is invitation to celebrate and invitation to edit. Okay, so let's talk with, so we're going to do invitation to, which do you want to do? I'll put y'all have a choice. Do y'all want to do invitation to edit, or do you want to do invitation to celebrate first? Celebrate or edit, invitation to edit. Great, so what I'd like you to do is pick a book and find a minute, keep in your mind, decide with your partner what convention you want to look for. If you want to look at nouns, do you want to look at periods in the sentences? Do you want to look at names? Capitalized English. Think of a convention real quick. Find a mentor sentence in that text, and then write it on your piece of paper. And I have different kinds of paper. People like different kinds, and I have markers. Some people like paper line paper, and different markers. So find a mentor sentence for whatever convention. First is on your convention, and then find a mentor sentence. Okay, then you want to write it down on a piece of paper. I have to put up paper. I have markers here. Some people like to work with markers. you're like me when I was looking at these books, I started reading them.
It's just one.
So if you're doing verbs, you might want to be using the focus phrase of I use verbs to show action. If you're doing names, you're going to names, so I capitalize names. I'm just telling you, that would be your focus phrase. Something very simple, to the point, children's language, concise.
Yeah. Once again, feel those folks caught in, looked at, and listened to.
Okay, so she's writing down they found her sentence. So what you're going to do, if you'd like to look in your Patterns of Power book for an example, what you're going to do is, yours is going to be a little different because yours is about capitalizing names. So you're going to want to write a sentence not about Chester, not about necessarily that story, but some other sentences that have names in them that maybe one of the names is not capitalized, okay? Or maybe another sentence where the name is capitalized and another word that's not a name is capitalized.
Just
and
random?
you notice it. Yeah, they don't have to be anything about it's about the it's about your targeted convention that you're working on. It's not about Chester.
Okay.
So if you're talking about action words, okay, and your thing is, I use verbs to show action, okay, then you're going to want to change one of those action words or write a sentence that uses not an action word, like a be verb or not, doesn't have action in it, okay, what's missing from this sentence. So you're going to want to have like three different sentences that you can compare to that and say, how is this different from that? What,
So
then you're going to want to have one that's the same.
this
That is correct.
The two wrong were correct.
Right.
I went to the doctor. That's hard.
Because that's why we're practicing it. Yes, I thought would be the part where we needed to practice. This is where we would fall down. We would know the noticing. So this is why I
That's the
picked
right
this
one.
part.
That's the right one. And he checked me out.
I went to the doctor. Another one or here?
Well, you can just do another one to show action. And he checked.
And we checked the other one.
This one, and he.
Okay, that's there.
Okay, so what if you get stuck? How do you solve your problems if you get stuck? Okay, so that's a good question. You go to your Patterns of Power book, and there'll be a convention in here, and focus phrases, and samples of correct ones that you can use as a model. So you can use this as a resource for figuring out how to do this. Okay, but once you start doing it, it'll start coming more quickly, and then you'll be able to write them really fast, and then they'll tell your planning time. Because you can do this with less planning time. You'll be able to know, okay, on Thursday I'm doing invitation to edit, and I need my 3 sentences when you're writing, and you can start, once you get the hang of it, that plan will be very quick. You can just type it real quick in your lesson plans, and then it's done. Your 10-minute lesson is just 3 sentences. And then you just take that, and then my lessons probably are never going to be 10 minutes. I'll be honest with you, I probably will be 12 or 13, but I talk.
So it's 2 wrong and
2 wrong and 1
and
right.
1 right.
And that way they see the right thing in a different type of writing, in more realistic, in their own kind of writing, not just in the book. And when you're doing your invitation to notice, you're pointing out all these things that you see in books. You encourage them to see in other books. So that's invitation to notice. So editing uses Thomas to learn perpendiculars. And you capitalized it.
Correctly.
And so
You all all the writing purposes.
They're gonna write them in their journal,
Right.
the correct
You
one,
can-
and-
You don't have, you write it, and you just, it's like invitation to notice, some of the
Uh-huh.
same skills of invitation to notice, but then you're talking about how it's wrong. On the mentor sentence, at the top, you don't want to use a lot of corrections. That's another key, because it confuses readers, so what it was. So sometimes you want to keep the mentor sentence clean, okay?
Okay.
So then when you talk about it, you do it like, almost like compare and contrast about why is it like that, okay? So you can use your Patterns of Power book as a resource for your thing. So I wanted you to come away from this today with being able to not just know the Patterns of Power, but be able to understand how you can take any book that we have and create. So you could actually take these books to your room today, and or could start. I'm gonna read the book. Next day, I'm gonna do invitation and notice, whatever you said. I'm gonna see if this works. I'm just gonna experiment, okay, with my kids in this book that I just gave you, and then I'm gonna say, okay, does this work? And go through it. And you already have now your sentences for the invitation to edit, which is one of the most difficult things to come up with. So I want you to go away with something good. And then the other thing I wanted to do really quickly, that you did great, did great on your sentences. I figured it out. Yeah, see, once you start doing it, but the first time you do it, that's why I wanted to get over this little hump, because I figure once we get over this, and this becomes so easy for us, it'll be, of course we teach this, not, oh yeah, Patterns of Power, yeah, I have to get those books that he has. No, I don't have to go find that book. I don't have that book. I don't know. I don't want to make copies of what's in there. So it just becomes as a tool, not something you have to do. If you're already reading a book, you just do it. So it's not one more thing you have to go look up. It's just a way, and it's a way that the children get. It's very exciting. I'm very excited about this. It's going to be great. So one more thing that I want to do, if we could brainstorm really quickly, is invitations to celebrate. Okay, so I put some different ideas, and I love that it's applying that verb and covered in joy. I just love that, because it's just the way of thinking about celebration. It's not a party. It's just joyousness over work and noticing and writing sentences. And so to me, I'm thinking, oh, celebration, I have to go buy some
They love it.
Yeah.
party favors. Right. So one of the things is I thought we could, on my little board, because I know we're sitting at this table, it's only 4 of us. Well, there's 5 of us got called away. Here's some Post-it notes. I have some variety of colors. And my markers that I just took away. And you could write some ideas, because sometimes I don't have ideas how to celebrate, because I think it has to be a party. So when I was reading, I was like, oh, it's just some of the things that we do. Like, how do you celebrate your children's writing? Or what can we do better to celebrate this writing? Because the more we celebrate it, the more they're going to want to do it. And it'll feed the machine. Okay, that's great, perfect. If you can write it all in one, or you can write it on multiple ones. I kind of like to fill up our board. So I have all covered our colors.
Basically put the.
Oh, that's good though,
Oh.
it's good. Post their work and display their work. So maybe you have a outside on the outside, or maybe a particular writing convention bulletin board.
Yes.
Or maybe use it as a mentor sentence in your writing center. Use as an example, hey, this is such a great sentence. This person will celebrate. This is so fantastic. We're going to use that as our mentor sentence in the writing center this week for whatever you're writing on. Whatever they did. So you celebrate their work as you use it. Okay, that's lovely. post their best writing around the room. Oh, that could you could almost do a writing scoop. Hey, we had these great things. What convention did that author's use to do like a writer scoop and celebrate? Oh, they did such fantastic. Now find out what convention they were working on, and then we could celebrate and cheer for them. So that's kind of like another way of posting their best writing around the room. That made me think about that. And sometimes I have this random. This kid really wants me to hang up that acrostic poem. So it's kind of randomly hung. They don't care. They go over there and they read that one acrostic poem, which is crazily hung over there, because they all love it. They just don't love that poem, but I have to keep it there forever, apparently, because they love that one poem. So, because we celebrated that kid's work. So, that's all right. My kids will like it. So, okay, so I hope that you came away today with inspired that conventions aren't scary, and conventions you don't have to know them like complex and supporting conjunctions. And you just have to inspire them to invite them to notice. It creates metacognition, and it creates the opportunities for them to see it in writing and for them to write it. So that's kind of how I want you to come away with the ability to take something with you that you can use. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to write them down, and then I'm going to send them all to you as email so that we have generated a new list of all the ways to celebrate. But sometimes we get stuck. Oh, I already celebrated that. I've been celebrating like that for 2 weeks, so you don't want to change it up. So sometimes you get stuck. So I'm going to print all of our ideas out for celebrating, and then I'll send them to you so you'll have a ways to celebrate records. And you just create a little file, and then whenever you want to celebrate something, you have an idea. So that'll be great. Perfect. Oh, look, she has all right, guys, thank you so much. I know we have to go get our kids. Thank you so much.
I really.
Sorry I talked so fast. I was just trying to get everything in.